Welcome to another episode of Black Swan Revelations. Today we're going to be diving into Exodus. This is just going to be a quick little Bible study. We're going to be diving into the story of Moses when he approached Pharaoh, and we're not going to go through this thoroughly, like verse by verse, but I think it's important to talk about this story every once in a while because I'm in Exodus right now. And there's some interesting things that I would like to share. And perhaps you didn't think about this, or maybe you did. Don't know. But I always like to dive deep every once in a while. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump into this. And if you're working, maybe you're cleaning your house or you're driving, whatever, hopefully you'll get something out of this. And then perhaps once you get home, you can do a deep dive for yourself. So without any further ado, let's go into Exodus and dive into Exodus chapter 5. All right. Let's have a look at this here. I'm just going to put this up. I'm going to make this full screen. There we go. Let me get rid of this background as well. There. All right. So let's jump into this. Let's go into... Actually, let's back up a bit. So in Exodus 4, Moses is having a conversation with God in regards to approaching Israel to tell them that God has indeed heard about their suffering. So chapter 4, Moses answered and said, "But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee." And the Lord said unto him, "What is it? What is that in thine hand?" He said, "A rod." He said, "Cast it on the ground." And he cast it on the ground and became a serpent. Moses fled from it. And the Lord said unto Moses, "Put forth thine hand and take it by the tail." Put forth his hand, caught it, and became a rod in his hand, that they may believe the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, hath appeared unto thee. And then he goes on. I just want to come down here to verse 10. Moses, so again, God is giving him some ways to present himself to the Israelites so that they would believe him, believe that he saw God, believe that God spoke to him, and believe that God is going to help them with their burdens, if you will, from Egypt. He's paying attention to them. So verse 10, and Moses said unto the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." And the Lord said unto him, "Who hath made man's mouth, or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or seeing, or the blind? Have I not the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say." All right, so this is interesting because there's people out there that'll say, well, Moses had a speech impediment. He stuttered. And this is why he was saying this to God. And God's like, what does he say here? It says, "The Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth?" So this is why people say things like this. But I'm going to pose an argument that Moses was a very good speaker, and that Moses was very good with the Egyptian tongue, but he may not have been very good at Hebrew until later. This is my theory. Why? Because he was raised as an Egyptian. He was taught by the Egyptians for 40 years. So God is telling him now to go to Israel and speak to them. And this is where Moses says, look, I'm not eloquent. I'm slow of speech and slow tongue. To me, this means in regards to speaking Hebrew, because if you show up and you're trying to convince a nation and you don't even speak their language, or maybe you aren't as good as some of the orators in their language, they're not going to believe you. They're just going to be like, yeah, who's this foreigner kind of thing. And I think that was the taste, or that was the disdain, if you will, of some of the Israelites towards Moses. Here we are suffering, and here you are trying to tell us what God has said to you, but not to us. So again, this was one of the reasons why Moses fled. Don't forget about that. Let's just go over. Let's back up. Let's back up to Exodus 3. Actually, Exodus 2. Let's go to Exodus 2. So let's just scroll down. Yeah, right here. When the child grew, she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So this is Moses' mother raising him. And then once he was weaned, she brought him to Pharaoh. Pharaoh's daughter called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days, what days? Those days that Moses lived in Egypt, most likely came to visit Goshen. When Moses was grown, that he went unto his brethren, so he would have been about 40 years old. And he went out unto his brethren, the Israelites, and looked on their burdens, I should say. And he spied, which is interesting, an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he spied. What does this mean? He spied. This means he thought no one was looking, no one was paying attention. He's kind of looking around, seeing who's around, what's going on here. And he's observing this Egyptian striking a Hebrew. Now, this, for all we know, this Hebrew could have been one of the officers of the Israelites overseeing some of the tasks that they had to perform. And this Egyptian was a task master over the Hebrew officer. Because this was kind of a common practice that if they didn't fulfill their quota for the day or whatever task, if there was an argument or whatever, this Egyptian was allowed to beat the Hebrew, the officers. So Moses is kind of giving a quick look around. Verse 12, and he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, as in there's no witnesses, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So we're going to call this Hebrew person A, person of influence A, exhibit A, okay? We'll come back to that. So he slew the man and hid him in the sand. Very similar to what Cain did to Abel. Cain slew Abel and hid him in the sand, and God said, where's your brother? And he's like, well, am I my brother's keeper? And I believe he hid him in the sand just like this. And God said, your brother's blood is crying out to you. So then when we go over to verse 13, I'm just going to bring myself back on here. I think this is a better screen right here. All right. So continuing on here. When he saw that there was no man, because this is what spies do. They look around, they make sure nobody sees them come in, no one sees them leave. So when he saw that there's no man, he slew the Egyptian, hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, so the next day, he's going out to spy upon his brothers and have a look and see how they're doing. Behold, two men, this caught his attention, of the Hebrews strove together. So these could have been officers as well. And he said to him, that did the wrong, this is person of influence A. This is exhibit A. Remember the gentleman the day before? Because remember, there were no witnesses. There was no one around except this Egyptian smiting in Hebrew. So we call him person A. So now person A the next day is fighting with someone else. This guy's got a problem. Fought with the Egyptian taskmaster the day before. Now he's fighting with one of his fellow officers, perhaps. And he said to him that did the wrong, the person that was in the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? So you're in the wrong. Why are you getting in a fight with your fellow brother? Because you're in the wrong. And he said, person A, remember the guy from the day before, who made thee a prince and judge over us? A prince meaning, we know who you are, Moses. You weren't raised with us. You were raised as an Egyptian. So who do you think you are? Suddenly you're a prince and a judge over us? You don't belong to us. Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedest the Egyptian? This is how we know this is person A from yesterday. And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known, as in, this guy is probably going to spread rumors or whatever. He's going to let people know that I did it. And the reason why I say this guy is an officer, because officers is Israelite, if I can say that, Hebrew officers, if you will, because they spoke Hebrew, would present themselves before Pharaoh. Guaranteed this guy went before Pharaoh thinking that maybe he can get a little bit, maybe a little bit more favor, because he's getting a little bit tired of getting beaten by the Egyptians for not fulfilling his quota. And remember, this is before Moses comes back, right? I'm just saying that this is the circumstance that these Hebrews are dealing with the Egyptians. So Moses said, surely this thing is known. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, most likely from Exhibit A, he sought to slay Moses. And Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh. And then we know the rest of the story. All right, so let's go over to Exodus 5. Exodus 5. So this is why we see Moses now getting in an argument with God saying, look, I just faced those guys. They don't like me. When I killed an Egyptian, they ratted me out. And I almost got killed by the Egyptians themselves. This is why I'm here. Now you want me to go back to the Israelites and tell them God spoke to me. God told me what to say to you. And they just finished saying, well, this would have been 40 years ago, that who made you prince and judge over us? Well, apparently God did. So let's go down. Moses said unto Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and slow tongue. The Lord said, who made man's mouth? Who maketh the dumb or deaf or seeing or the blind? Have I not the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. So this is very reminiscent of the Holy Spirit, is it not? And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of whom thou wilt send. Summon someone else. Here, my Lord, send me to the nations. No, send someone else. That's what Moses' response was. Verse 14, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. He's getting a little ticked. And he said, is not Aaron the Levite? Just remember, Moses and Aaron are descendants of the Levites. Thy brother, I know that he can speak well. In what regards? Most likely Hebrew. He may very well been able to speak Egyptian, but we know he spoke Hebrew very well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. It's interesting that Israel at this point in time can come and go as they please. And I think people think that these Israelites were chained to their work. But I think you could pose an argument that what was actually happening is the Israelites were in bondage to Egypt because of all the blessings, all the work that they had done. You could almost say they were workaholics in some ways because they were very good at it. They were experts. They were good at shepherding, all this kind of stuff. And everything that they touched was blessed. So now you have taskmasters over the officers, and these officers would often complain, and rightfully so. But they had that relationship with their taskmasters, that the taskmasters knew what the officers were doing, that they were doing good work. But they would also complain every once in a while and say, you know what, in order for this to be better, we need this resource or we need that, and then we can make it better. Sometimes that could be annoying in the wrong circle where you're always improving everything and you don't just leave things the same and you just keep, hey, I can do this better. It kind of comes across as arrogant. And we know this in the workplace. When someone comes up and they're always thinking of something better, they never want anything to be the same. It gets tiring after a while. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying when you get experts that everything they touch flourishes, and you have the Egyptians that are like, you know what? I'm just punching in here. I don't really care about you guys. I have things to do. I have quotas to fill. And every time you talk to me, there's a chance I can get punished by Pharaoh himself. So if you got something to say to me, get it out quickly. I don't need the long story. Just tell me what we need to do to make this better. That's it. So just picture this over a period of 400 years, because the Israelites had favor coming in to Egypt, and then they lived in the best land, which is Goshen. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, looking at Joseph, going, okay, this is one brother, and this is the youngest brother, and he had a rough life. He had a rough life. He's in prison. This guy's got so much integrity, and everything he touches is just making us flourish. And he's like the second from being the youngest. He's the 11th child. I wonder how much better his older brothers would be. Because can you imagine having 12 Josephs in Egypt? What that would mean for our economy? And in fact, there was actually a family of 70 people. And I'm just spitballing what Pharaoh would be thinking when Joseph is presenting himself with his 5 brothers, saying, look, these guys are here and we're moving them to the land of Goshen because they're shepherds and all this stuff. So Pharaoh says to Joseph, if you know of any skills that these guys bring to the table, put them in charge. So imagine extreme favor for the Israelites, even though there's only 70, and watch the favor of God stay, but the favor in the eyes of the Egyptians starts to wane over 400 years. And this is where we're at when Moses is looking this way and looking that way, and he's seeing this Egyptian kind of stepping out of line. Perhaps he's got a little bit of pressure. He's got bills to pay, mortgages to pay, pyramids to build. And this Hebrew is talking back to him. So he's giving him a bit of a licking. And Moses is like, yeah, I'm going to interfere in this one. And actually killed the guy. And then covered it up. And probably told the guy, go back to your camp. And then the next day, the guy is fighting with someone else, arguing. And they probably get into a fist fight. And Moses intercedes. And they're like, who are you? You think you're a prince? You think you're a judge? You think you're special? They didn't want anything to do with Moses. So that's the context, or the background, if you will, of why Moses is like, well, if I go back to Israel, to the Israelites in Egypt, they're not going to listen to me. I haven't been raised an Israelite. And then God says, well, what about Moses? Or what about Aaron, your brother? He can speak well. So then they go to the elders and they say that God met with Moses, and Aaron tells them everything. So the way that this works now moving forward is Aaron is going to be the spokesperson, like a Moses, and Moses would be like a God to Aaron. That's the relationship. So basically Moses would tell Aaron something, and then Aaron would speak to the Israelites. And I believe Moses was talking to Pharaoh. And I think perhaps they had a 1-2 punch where when Moses and Aaron are together, I think what would happen with Pharaoh is like, okay, let me get this straight. You want to take your people, quotations, even though I've funded your education for the past 40 years and I've treated you guys pretty good. And, you know, really, you guys have land, all this kind of stuff. And I've paid for your education via my daughter, through my daughter. And you're asking me to stop working, the Israelites, your people, to stop working and go away for a vacation? Yeah, sorry, I'm not listening to you. And besides that, you don't even speak very good Hebrew, really, at the end of the day. So why are you speaking on behalf of those disgusting people? Like, really, like you should be an Egyptian. You are an Egyptian in my eyes. So why are you talking to me about this? You're actually wasting their time because they have quotas to fulfill. So this is the conversation that's going on with Moses and Pharaoh. And when they left, the taskmasters and the officers presented themselves before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, because of what he did, I'm going to increase, or you're going to maintain the quota, but this time I'm not providing straw for you anymore. The taskmasters that are with you, they're not lifting a finger to help you find straw. So instead, you're going to have to go out and find straw for yourself, and your quota is not to be diminished. So then they walk out, the officers storm out, and let's just fast forward a little bit, because Moses had actually spoke to Pharaoh again another time. And Pharaoh says to Moses, like, these guys are idle, get out of here, scram, beat it. So then they leave, and then the officers come in, and then the officers are like, look, you're asking a lot from us. You're telling us to fulfill our quotas, which we've been doing, but now you're telling us to go and get straw for ourselves. And we got to go all throughout Egypt to find it and still meet our quota. So it's your people's fault. It's not ours. Whoever came up with this idea to go do this, it's ridiculous. And Pharaoh says, no, you guys are just being lazy. So fulfill your quota. That's the end of the story. And as they're walking out, they see Moses and Aaron standing there. And the officers say to Moses, this taste of freedom that we were beginning to experience, this sweet savor that you had mentioned to us, that God remembers us and God noticed us through these hard times, you're making us stink right now in front of Pharaoh. And you've basically doubled our work. So I don't want anything to do with you. These are the officers. And they leave. And then later Moses is like, ever since I started talking to Pharaoh, you've made their work harder. So this is the conversation. It's kind of an interesting dynamic here. These are real people. These are real situations. So let's just go back. Let's go back to Exodus. Let's go. Let's go. Chapter 5. Hopefully you can see this. Yes. Okay. Chapter 5. And afterward Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me. A vacation, basically, to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go. And they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days' journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence and with the sword, which is interesting. And the king of Egypt said unto them, wherefore do ye, Moses and Aaron, let the people from their works? Like, well, why are you guys here? You guys are lazy. You're making your people lazy. Get you onto your burdens. Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and ye make them rest from their burdens. And Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers. The officers are over the Israelites, and the taskmasters are over the officers. Ye shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. So it was provided. Now it's not provided. So now they have to work harder. And the tale of the bricks, which they did make heretofore, ye shall lay upon them. So now they got to make their own bricks. They got to go get their own straw. Ye shall not diminish aught thereof, meaning your quota is not changing. You still have to fulfill your quota. For they be idle. Therefore they cry, saying, let us go and sacrifice to our God. This is why they're crying. It's because they're lazy. Let no more work be laid up. Let there more work be laid upon the men, that they may labor therein, and let them not regard vain words. So if we make the Israelites more busy, they're not going to have time to lie around and go, oh, I wonder if I deserve 2 weeks vacation, 3 weeks, 4 weeks vacation. Where shall we go? Where shall we go? So it's like, yeah, no, I'm going to make these guys busy now because they got life pretty good. They're probably, this is what the Israelites are used to, this lifestyle where they get good food, they have steady pay, steady job, all this kind of stuff. Things are working. Because remember, when they go to the desert, they complain afterwards. They say, we had it better there than here. So think about that. And the taskmasters of the people went out, and their officers, and they spake to the people, saying, thus saith Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go ye, get you straw where you can find it, yet not aught of your work shall be diminished. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. So this tells you that it was not easy, because straw they would use to make bricks and all this stuff. So now they're finding stubble to use for straw. Like, they got to gather a lot in order to make up for the straw that they're actually being handed. All right, so, and the taskmasters hasted them, saying, fulfill your works, your daily tasks, as when there was straw. So the taskmasters are saying this to the officers. And the officers of the children of Israel, which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and demanded, "Wherefore have ye not fulfilled your task in making brick both yesterday and today?" So now they haven't fulfilled their quota for 2 days in a row. So the officers are getting beaten, not the people. The officers are getting beaten. And better believe that if the officers get beaten, they're going to go talk to their people with a different tone, saying, "Look, I am getting beaten like a rented mule. We have to fulfill our daily quotes." Lots of pressure on these officers. Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, "Wherefore dealest thou thus with thy servants?" So they had a relationship, as in Pharaoh was allowing them to show up at Pharaoh's court, if you will, and present their case. "There is no straw given unto thy servants, and they say to us," meaning the taskmasters are saying to us, "Make brick, and behold, thy servants are beaten, but the fault is thine own people." These officers are giving us ridiculous quotas. But he said, this is Pharaoh, "Ye are idle, you're lazy. Therefore ye say, Let us go and do sacrifice to the Lord. We need a holiday. Go therefore now and work, for there shall no straw be given you, yet ye shall deliver the tale of bricks." Same quota as before. "And they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, The Lord look upon you and judge." Let God be your judge, "because ye have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh." What savor? The idea that we are tasting freedom. This is horrible. This is detestable in the eyes of Pharaoh. So you gave us hope. You gave us a glimmer of light. You allowed us for a moment to taste freedom, and you ripped it away from us, you and your brother, because we're disgusting in their sight. So get away from us. We don't want anything to do with you. And Moses returned. Verse 21. "And they said unto him, The Lord look upon you and judge, because ye have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants, the taskmasters, to put a sword in their hand to slay us." So this wasn't just your ordinary beatings, but they're beating them with swords as well. And it could end up that they could be killed if they don't fulfill their quota. "And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Lord, wherefore hast thou so evil entreated this people?" Why did you do this to this people? Why is it that thou hast sent me? Like, why are we here? "For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in thy name, he hath done evil to this people, neither hast thou delivered thy people at all." So this is the argument that Moses is having with God. So I'm not going to go into chapter 6, but I just want to read just one verse. "Then the Lord said unto Moses, Now thou shalt see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his hand." That goes on and on. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot there of what was going on in Exodus. I find it a fascinating study. I really do. I enjoy the book of Exodus, and one of my next favorite books is Leviticus. I absolutely love Leviticus. So perhaps I'll do a bit of a deep dive down the road. That's it for today's devotion. Make sure and join us on Sunday night, as we're going to be talking about the Titanic. Was the Titanic a black swan event? Was it something that was unforeseeable, or was it planned? Because there's lots of conspiracies going around the Titanic, and we're going to be talking about them. And also, we're going to be having Robert Breaker on as well as a guest on Sunday night, so you don't want to miss it. And he's got some stories about his grandfather, who has stories about the Titanic, so probably passed from perhaps his great-grandfather. So it's going to be interesting Sunday night. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. I'm going to be talking as we go on Sunday nights. I'm going to be talking about more topics that are a little bit more controversial, if you will, more on the side of what's really going on. That's the question. This is how I approach certain topics. And sometimes the more you dive deep down some of these rabbit holes, man, you uncover a lot of stuff, a lot of shady stuff going on, a lot of stuff. And we're going to start off with the Titanic and talk about it. We're going to talk about both sides. There's lots of negligence that has gone on with the Titanic, and a lot of mistakes happen, and clearly a tragedy happened as well. Like 1,500 souls were lost that day as well. But did it need to happen? Did it need to happen? Was it planned? We're going to talk about that Sunday night. So join us. And I'll also have a couple of other guests joining me. Amy Moosefeld will be joining me as well. I'm not sure if my sister's coming on. Greg from Uptime, or is Greg coming? I'm not sure if Greg is coming yet, but Michael Poles is coming on as well. So we'll have a few guests. It'll be fun. We won't have like 20 guests or whatever, but it'll be an intimate Black Swan ultimate round table. So join us. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video. Bye for now. See you later. Let's do this. There we go. Give you guys some music on the way out. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys. Lots of love. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share these videos. We're growing by leaps and bounds. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in another video. Bye for now.